special, I would say, new realities. And what do you call your show, Zenka?
Yeah, well, this is just a watch party right now, but yeah.
Anyway, okay, we have Ron James here, just did a great movie called Accidental Truth.
Just a watch party right now, but yeah.
Anyway, okay. And then we also have a lobbyist in Washington, Steve Bassett, who's been on the job for trying to make these sort of things happen. Steve, what are we seeing today, and what do you expect?
This is a process I fully expected. The first hearing, basic hearing, procedural hearing was Andre Carson's subcommittee. Moultrie showed up, Bray showed up. They showed some things. They did their job to report. Everybody had high expectations. That's way too soon. This is the next formal hearing. Now, there have been mentions in some other hearings where this has come up, but they weren't specifically about this issue. Most importantly, the May 28th hearing, in which in front of the same subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee for Emerging Threats and Capabilities, the chair, Kirsten Gillibrand, a very formidable senator who is run for Congress, and I assure you intends to run for Congress again, is specifically bringing in Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who is the head of AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, to address the legislation that has been passed, some of it written by her. How are things going over there? What do you think about my concerns regarding the funding that I brought up to Secretary of Defense Austin on May 28th, et cetera, et cetera? And he's going to answer appropriate questions. Is he going to start revealing information about the extraterrestrials? No, he's not going to do that, right? But the very fact that this gentleman, who, by the way, check his background out, just Google Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and look at his bio. This man has an extraordinary career in science and in serving the country in the Department of Defense and the DIA. This is not somebody that's going to throw that career down the drain to take on a bogus position with a UAP organization. He is in there because he has all the right qualifications to be able to address this issue from every perspective. And so he is in there talking to an important senator. This is a milestone. I don't know how it'll last. It won't generate information that satisfies the people that want it now. And I want it now. But it is a clear marker to everyone else in the Congress that in case you weren't thinking we weren't taking this seriously, we are. All right. I'm taking this seriously. I'm going to be running for president. My star is rising in the Republican and in the Democratic Party. All right. And I am not afraid of this issue. In fact, the message that she's sending to me is that she intends to ride a UAP into the White House. And I thought I would never say that in my 25-year career. All right. Hillary Clinton had a chance to maybe do that, but the circumstances were not the same. And it was just too risky to do. And it wasn't a basis for it. Not the case now. And so this hearing is important for that reason alone. Now, it'll be interesting to see what we learn. It'll be interesting to see if any how would you say, tidbits are thrown out to get our attention. But the fact that it's being held, that it's going to be watched worldwide, as far as I know, this is what's most important today, and I'm very pleased.
Well, we're happy you're here. Ron, any feedback about your end of this or what Steve said and what you know about what's coming up?
Well, yeah, I've been spending a lot of time in Washington, D.C., and I think that there's a lot of people out there that are taking credit for being involved in this process that haven't really had much to do with it. I had lunch with Andre Carson last month and a couple of meetings with Tim Burchett and some other people on the Hill. And what we're seeing unfold is a lot of what we've seen is Mufon at work in DC. We've got the best lobbying firm on the planet that's owned a woman-owned lobbying firm called A10 and Associates, and they've plugged us in. In the last year, we've had over 200 meetings with sitting members of Congress, the Intelligence Committee, and numerous staffers. Mufon was responsible for pushing Andre Carson and Gillibrand and Mike Gallagher to have those hearings. We were very instrumental in them happening. And we've also been instrumental in the language of the new legislation. One of the most important things that we were able to contribute is that there is a military accountability clause in there that goes back to 1945. Where the military has to come forth with all the records they have regarding UAP going back to 1945. The initial legislation read 1947, and it was us that got that extra 2 years put in through a lot of meetings and a lot of requests, because that 2 years is very important. There were things that happened pre-Roswell that we wanted to make sure got covered. And so this is just an example of some of the things that we've actually been doing in DC to get things done. And it's been very, very rewarding to have a seat at the table. So now Mufon is actually contributing. And this is the first time I'm actually able to talk about a lot of this stuff. It's not been public knowledge yet, because we've been kind of cautious about what we say, but I've been cleared as the media relations director for Mufon to be able to actually tell about these things. So another really, really exciting thing that has happened is that Mufon is actually providing quarterly reports to the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee on our UFO reports and tracking and our internal information about what we're gathering. So for once, a civilian organization and people actually pounding the pavement in DC doing the work have a seat at the table. And it's really, really amazing.
I just want to tell people what we're talking about. Steve and Ron and Zenka and I talking about the upcoming hearing starting about 10 minutes, supposedly, that the U.S. Senate. Steve, can you tell us what exactly we're going to be seeing today?
Well, first of all, let me second what Ron just said. This hearing, this isn't happening in a vacuum. An enormous amount of work on the part of public citizens and organizations like Mufon, which has stepped in now big time. It's had decades to prepare for this moment, and it is definitely stepping up, is one of the reasons this is all happening.
And this guy's paved the way for years and years and years doing this work when nobody else was. And so, you know, that credit cannot be denied.
Well, there's a lot of credit to go around. And one of my jobs going forward with some of the work I'm doing is to make sure that that credit does get around and that the public understands just how big the civilian component of this. It wasn't as if these members of Congress suddenly woke up one day and said, oh, I think I want to do the right thing. Oh, no. And Mufon, well, let me just say that I'm so proud of Mufon, which has come together. Ron was instrumental in really bringing it into the 21st century, to be perfectly honest with you. It is the legacy of NICAP. It is the legacy of Alan Hynek and the others, right? And it is 1969. What is that? 54 years.
Yeah,
So,
it's our 55th anniversary next year.
So this is a citizen success. I expect a cordial, appropriate, professional engagement between the two people, right? Kirkpatrick and Gillibrand and any other members of the committee. They're going to behave themselves because this issue is absolutely nonpartisan, and they need every opportunity to be nonpartisan that they can get. And it's going to make people feel good. Those that want it now and they want them to bring the saucer wreckage out tomorrow, they're going to be disappointed. But trust me, folks, we're on an irrevocable path to getting the major hearings that we must have with the key witnesses. And ultimately that allows the president to confirm. So I got to leave you with that. Got to go with another show. What can I say?
You can just say a little bit. Who's Sean Kirkpatrick? What is his background? And we'll also ask Ron.
In science with a PhD. He has worked in many entities within the Department of Defense, including the DIA. He has a stellar career. He is an exceptional individual. Trust me. And if you don't believe me, Google his biography, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, we were just looking at it. It got sent to us.
Okay.
He believe me, this was not a downgrade for him. This is a career move that will probably place him in the forefront of history.
And before Steve leaves, I just want to say, it's no coincidence, by way of the mysterious universe we live in, that this movie Accidental Truth hit the street yesterday, and I'm telling all kinds of people that if you really want to watch the hearings, then watch the movie and choose which one you're going to believe. My crystal ball is telling me that this is going to be another bit of a, for lack of a better phrase, maybe a little bit more of a dog and pony show. And
well, maybe, I mean, but thanks, Ron. Steve, thanks so much. You expect the ball to be moved down the field today, right, Steve?
Gotta go, guys. Later.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Steve Bassett, one of the probably one of the few or only lobbyists or UFO disclosure in Washington. And then now Mufon, talk about that, Ron, how Mufon is now lobbying, Congress for hearings and for laws and for truth disclosure. I mean,
yeah, I mean, we have a full-time active lobbying firm working in DC that is, and Mufon's director, Dave McDonald, is flying into the town on a regular basis, having meetings, and we've definitely made a difference. So we're able to actually point to different things and say, yes, we were instrumental in making this happen. And these hearings are one of those things. It's I'm not saying that we're the only ones that moved the ball, but I know that the last hearings, it was meetings with Andre Carson and Mufon that got those hearings initiated and got them done. And there's other people involved, I'm sure. There's a lot of people saying they are. So we'll see, but yeah, we've been doing a lot. And then of course the Accidental Truth movie is a production of Mufon Television, which I have. And so we're really doing a lot to move the whole.
Hey, do you have a little trailer that while we're waiting for these hearings to start, do you have a little like 2-minute trailer for the film you want to bring up, or and because
it's if you just search Accidental Truth trailer, it'll pop up on YouTube.
Okay, can you do that, Zenka? Accidental Truth. And
Yeah,
also,
totally. Yep.
and it's really worth seeing. I saw it about a few weeks ago. I think you really reveal what's going on in the inside, and that we're getting closer.
It's such a coincidence that the film came out the day before these new hearings. And, right now you can buy it across all the digital platforms, but in a week you'll be able to rent it on the 25th. And that's, it's already in the top 5 on Apple just by purchase only.
Great. I just also want to show that we, where's that? Is this it? I think this is it.
This is.
Okay, go ahead. If you want to share your screen, I'm just telling people it should be coming up that we are going to be hearing together and then commenting on these All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is now the current arm of UFO investigation, UAP investigations within Congress. And so
one thing that we might want to point out, Steve had mentioned Gillibrand and Gallagher and all these people. This is in the Senate, today's hearing. So this is not going to probably feature those guys because they're in the House. So this is going to be a whole new cast of characters that are going to be appearing today. And, my crystal ball prediction is that we're going to see the infrastructure of compartmentalization at work, where plausible deniability is made possible by the fact that one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. So I'm predicting more of the same.
All right. Well, let's see what we get. Should we show the trailer and then I'll watch?
Yeah,
I'll
totally.
watch for it.
I just want to presence the people that are just joining us right now. We just have Steve Bassett and Ron James both heralding this day right now in Congress. We've been on these, watch parties before, and it's been like, man, this is not going to be good. This is just going to be, this is just going to be more of the same. But there's something different happening right now. There's traction happening. And, for those of you just joining it, it's you guys, like it's the Mufon people, it's the citizens that have gotten together, gotten organized. Steve Bassett doing all these lobbying, like this is what's possible. And what also is really getting me super excited right now is that it's a bipartisan, like how hilarious that we've thought that this whole, the UFO alien thing was going to divide the world. Well, what if it brings this country together? What if it's the one thing that both parties agree that that the US population wants in this election cycle? This is bringing it forward. So this is really exciting. I'm going to play the Accidental Truth trailer that we have pulled up. And I just want to echo what I was saying to Ron, is like, movies change the world, you guys. Stories change the world, and we're telling a new story. So
before you play that, let me tell you that the movie's it just came out yesterday, but prior to it being released, it's up to 9 different awards so far. It just won the best documentary at Parapod. This is the the Indie Fest Winner Award of Excellence. So I'm very surprised that it's gaining so much traction. It's narrated by Matthew Modine. That certainly helps a lot. But I'm just really excited to be putting this film out the day before these hearings. And it's and Alan, thank you so much for having me on the
Yeah,
show
of course.
today.
I think it's really important that we are the commentators for a world that really is 75 years behind truth. I mean, like the public has been denied this truth for 75 plus years, and now your film and everything else is coming out. So, all right, let's play it while we can.
Here we go.
I'm sitting in these rooms alone with people who have run secret weapons programs, interrogated terrorists, protected closely guarded secrets as a profession, and all I can think about is getting them to tell me something they don't want me to know.
It's going to take somebody at the executive level to do it, or there's going to be a incredible leak somewhere that somebody's conscience, and they don't end up, you know, committing suicide by 12 bullet holes to the back of the head kind of thing.
The UFO reality can no longer be denied. The secret has been managed and guarded by a select few for over 75 years. Advanced technology, biological and physical materials have been recovered. They've been secretly studied by compartmentalized factions within both government and industry. These claims are not new, but you are about to see undeniable evidence and previously unpublished accounts that make this case stronger than ever before. Somewhere between fact and denial, you are about to discover an accidental truth.
37820-584. He's up. I'm running over there now.
Yeah, great, Ron. And how can people find this when it goes to the market?
Oh, it came out last night, and it's available on all the digital platforms, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, everywhere. It's available for purchase right now, and on the 25th, it'll be available for rental. And it's already in the top 5 on Apple's iTunes documentary list, so that's pretty cool.
Great. It's a really great moment in the film where the accidental truths are being revealed by people like Gary Nolan, Lou Elizondo. I mean, he's done all this work himself. I mean, he's in his own, these are Ron's interviews. Ron, Ron, just give us a little background on who you are. Where have you been? I mean, what's your whole connection to the UFO field?
I've always been interested in the topic, and I've always owned my own production company since the 90s. In approximately 2007, I was actually hired by Steve Bassett to produce his X conference. And it was then that I realized that, we're dealing with the biggest deception of human history. And I decided early on that I wanted to do what I could to bring forth the truth. So over the years, I helped with the citizen hearing on disclosure, did all the video production and live streaming. And I've produced several UFO documentaries. I've won some EBE awards. I did the disclosure dialogues. I helped produce Travis, the true story of Travis Walton, Marilyn Monroe Declassified, just a few out there. And then I started in 2017. I approached Mufon to do a joint venture. We created Mufon Television, which is an online repository of over 700 UFO related pieces of media that you can't get anywhere else. So I did that, and then I finally ended up becoming the media relations director for Mufon, which is kind of cool. I got to be, because I get to work with Ancient Aliens and all these shows, and we were just on there a couple weeks ago. But that's kind of the culmination. And then accidental truth
Mhm.
is my it's the best thing I've done yet as far as getting this stuff out.
Mhm.
And I really did go in, and like in the beginning of that little trailer that you guys watched, it was an effort going back to 2009 to get answers out of people. It's really difficult to sit in a room
Mhm.
6 feet away from somebody who holds the keys to something you desperately want to find out information about, and they're just not going to tell you. And it's a very frustrating thing. So I did everything I could to get as much as I could out of everybody, and I shared this with the audience.
Well, not only that, they hold the keys to the evolution of civilization.
Yes.
This is the key. So today we're gathered to here for the watch party, and what are we're going to see Kristen Gillibrand talking to Sean Kirkpatrick. Is that the idea?
I don't know if we're going to see Gillibrand. She's we might.
Well,
This is in the Senate. I'm not sure if she's in the House or the Senate.
no, she's a senator from New
Okay,
York.
then we will see Gillibrand today.
Actually, I'm going to show a little clip of what Gillibrand said on a news show.
Oh,
This
good.
is from a great show I watch a lot, the Post-Disclosure World, and he kind of goes and shares. Do you see that on your screen there? Do you see this, Gillibrand? Do you see something
Yeah,
on
we
your screen?
we do. Perfect.
Okay, I'm just going to play a little clip here, and let me turn up the sound, and then we'll go make sure the hearing.
Created along with Senator Warner and Senator Rubio and Senator Heinrich and some others, an office within the DOD and the Intelligence Committee specifically to review every unidentified aerial phenomenon that the military has access to. And we have the most intensely specific technology that can video different aerial phenomenon, that can get radar, heat sensing through our aircraft, through other radar detection.
This is a good reminder that
This is
what Congress is pursuing.
This is the guy from the Post-Disclosure World. I totally recommend him.
Oh yeah,
his
he's
work.
got a great podcast.
Yeah, and then he kind of goes forward another clip from Gillibrand here.
The ground truth on this enigma.
And so we set up this office 2 years ago. And during that 2 years, they've reviewed over 300 different evidence of aerial phenomenon. About half of them were deemed to be weather balloons, these type of balloon technology, perhaps detection devices. About 24 were deemed to be drones. A handful were debris or birds. And there was still 171 that they have not assessed what it is.
This brings us to an article that dropped on April 17th.
Okay. I'm going to get, I mean, he's great and we can watch that, but I want to make sure we don't miss the hearings. But are the hearings up yet? Because I'm just looking for them on the, because I think Gillibrand is going to be there in the hearings, and
It is subject to whatever is going to be prior if that's running late. And, you guys, this hearing is mostly about finances, budgetary allocations, not necessarily about disclosure. And I'm thinking about this, thinking to myself, like, this is in a military context, but how interesting that it's important that money flows toward these parts of the U.S. government in this way, but it's also interesting that this is the way that the money flows, that we have to feel like, oh, is there a threat from China? Oh, are these balloons like always having to spend money on protecting ourselves or defending ourselves instead of on our own curiosity and intellectual curiosity. And obviously this, when ET contact happens, it's a renaissance. It's a renaissance of new ideas, of health, of all these other things. And here we are having to justify it based on protection and defense and all that stuff, which is just kind of interesting.
This threat narrative is serving its purpose. I don't agree with it. A lot of people don't agree with it. Stephen Greer is very outspoken on how bad it is to actually take this approach. But unfortunately, there is a series and a group of rank and file people within government, within military, that are only going to pay attention to this if it's framed that way. And it's just like Christopher Mellon told me. He says, we go by the premise that these are aliens, that a lot of people are just going to go blank. And so unfortunately, the threat narrative is what's gotten the attention of Congress. And let's just hope that they don't take it too far to the point where they're lathering up humanity for a battle with the aliens, because we're proving consistently that our society is easily manipulated. And
Right.
you know, we just have to hope that they don't take that road with this.
Well, no, I do want to say Kristen Gillibrand, senator from New York, who's going to be conducting these hearings, seems to be on our side.
Yes.
I think she knows that we are being visited by who's ever out there, non-human intelligence, and she is subtly pushing for that. She seems to be not denying the truth anymore. She seems to have been awakened to the fact that, yes, this has been a cover-up for 75, 80 years, and it's time. So I really think she's passionate about, and I mean, Bassett might be right. She might be riding the disclosure ticket to the White House. I don't know.
Well, you know, I know that that all of these people have had access to this film for about a month, and I know that many of them have watched it. And what's really interesting about what we're finding out as we get closer and closer to people in Congress is that these front-facing folks that are getting into elected office, they are being kept in the dark just as much as you and I, and they're not happy about it. And so when you walk in, a lot of people have this perception that the government is this big organized cover up, and that the people that we see sitting in Congress are part of it. They're not really part of it. They're as mad about it as we are. And when they're taken into these private rooms and they're given information that we're not being given yet, they're not happy about what they're being told, and they're not happy about the fact that it's been this major deception. So these guys are actually on our side, working within the framework that they have to work within, and we need to understand that. I didn't understand it for a long time.
But wait, some of them are not on our side, because the people you talk to, and I don't think they're in between Gary Nolan, Luis Elizondo. They're not the people pulling the strings, but they're the bridge to those who is denying truth from congressional mandates and laws. Who are those people?
Well, you know, Alan, we're never going to know. Those people are not going to be on TV tomorrow. We're never going to know exactly who they are. And the guys like the Hal Puthoffs and the Lou Elizondos, and these guys are the ones that are inside government trying to figure out who these people are. But you're right. They are being basically guided by what they can say and what they can't say. That's my position. And the people that are actually pulling the strings, you know, this whole thing got sequestered deep within a labyrinth of black programs, corporate infiltration, and basically created a situation where we have all these stovepipes and very, very few people know what's going on. So you might have a piece of material at Lockheed. You might have a propulsion system that nobody can figure out at Raytheon. Materials being distributed all over the place. Very, very few people know. And this started, you know, right after the Roswell era, where these groups were formed to manage this information. And over time, they've had unlimited money just about, and they've had zero accountability, and they've gone deeper and deeper and deeper. And so we're never gonna meet them. They're not coming on Tucker Carlson, and we're probably never going to get the whole truth, because a lot of it is dying in institutional memory. And that's one of the things that shocked me through the process of making this movie, is that they have no problem destroying evidence. They don't have any reverence for something that could be historical. They've destroyed a lot of important stuff. And as these people die off that were part of that original cover up, then who took their place, and what do they know? And unfortunately, a lot of the true history of everything may really be lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, Zenka, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, you know, we were talking about the threat narrative versus another narrative, and how You know, some of these Congress people are going to start having experiences. And I know from the research that experiences tend to be good ones and enlightening and interesting. So it's easy for me even to fear something that I don't know, right? Because it's a total unknown. But once you put the experience in there, we're going to start to get a different conversation and a different perspective, right? So this is exciting.
Yeah, I think it is really exciting, even if we don't really get to, you know, the extraterrestrial moment. At least the conversation's public, and this and AARO. Can we talk about this new department that's been, or new office that's been created within, I guess, the Defense Department? Is it to look at UAPs? I mean, it's.
Well, what we've seen since 2017 is basically an assembly line of acronyms. There's been all these different programs that were supposedly set up, and then they set them up, and then they decide they're not going to do it that way. So they set up another one. NASA's got their own. Isn't that amazing? NASA's going to actually start looking at UFOs.
Right.
Yeah. Hello. So, you know, what we're seeing here is just another acronym for another agency. And really what it is now we have all these agencies within different departments that can be stovepiped. And then we can just deal with the fact that none of them know what the other one's doing again and again and again.
And so they keep kind of moving, passing the ball around.
It's been a shell game. Yeah, it's been a shell game.
Yeah, it is. It's a shell game. So this is what we're going to be seeing today. Hopefully we're already, looks like, at least 15 minutes behind the scheduled time, hearing on the mission, activities, oversight, and budget of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. That's the new office that's going to be supposedly investigating UFOs, UAPs. Coverage begins momentarily. So you're saying this is a Senate hearing, and it's different thing that's happening in the House, Ron?
Yeah, you know, because in the House we had, well, this was before this thing even got started. In the House, it was a hearing about a whole different program that was supposedly existing, the UAP task force. This is a whole different thing that's being formed, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution, and it's not the same program. I think they're going to try to consolidate all this stuff, but as of now, there's just a bunch of different people running around doing different things. You know, we just heard quite a while ago, actually, but Dr. Travis Taylor is running ATIP now. And so, you know, I like Travis a lot, but he's making the Skinwalker Ranch TV show. So, you know, what's ATIP really all about when we have somebody that's a front-facing public guy running it? It's just very interesting. So we're seeing just a lot of shuffling of the deck.
Zenka, what about AARO, the office, All-Domain?
So AARO was designed to be to coordinate between the Department of Defense and the other intelligence departments. So this is the big complaint that a lot of people have had, is that there's no information sharing because people were so excited to have the secret knowledge, and you know they weren't sharing it out. And that's kind of what we're realizing even as citizens. Like, we as citizens actually have data that the US government needs as well. It's not very, you know, some of it's really well organized thanks to what Mufon is doing and other people. So this is really the signal that that they're interested also in figuring out how to, you know, and it mentions in some of the documents that they do want to figure out public disclosure. So this could be part of that coordination effort. They do want to look at health concerns related to UAP. So that's fine if they want to check all those boxes, right? But this is a clear sign that they're going to try to have some coordination between different intelligence community, you know, departments, the DoD, and then hopefully the US people.
And
Right.
what we do have to understand is that there are very clear factions within government that do not want this information out. So what we've seen since 2017, when Lou and Chris and TTSA and everybody came forward, this was an organized attempt, in my opinion, at bringing some sort of level of disclosure, but it got sidetracked due to a few different factors. And while it was being sidetracked, installed, and redefined, there was the ability of those who oppose this disclosure to get off their back feet and organize against it. And what we're seeing bubble to the surface through all these different programs and through all, if you saw the last hearings, the amount of plausible deniability because of compartmentalization in the answers these guys gave was off the charts. And it just proved how they managed the secrets. What we've seen manifesting here is that this internal battle over what we're going to be told and how we're going to be told it, and that has not been resolved. And we're dealing with a situation where, with technology advancing, with the Webb telescope, they're going to have to come clean about something, because sooner or later, Elon Musk is going to land on a pyramid on Mars, or Webb telescope is going to find a planet with lights on. It's only a matter of time until something happens that proves that this is a real thing, and they're trying to get ahead of it, but they can't really just come clean, because there's so many people that would be accountable for so much bad stuff that is a result of all this deception.
Well, we're
Yeah,
going to have to give, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Alan. I mean, I'm just going to say, that is the reality, you guys, is that, when we were 10 years old, we did bad stuff probably, or when we were 16 or 20. Well, this is what's happening here. There's a lot of stuff that we shouldn't have done, that people shouldn't have done, but that's okay, because that's where we're at. And so it's understandable that they're nervous about how far this curtain is going to open up, and hopefully we can counter that sadness, regret, shame, whatever has happened, with an excitement over what will be. Right? Because if what we're painting into the future, if the reality of this closure of the next move, right? Because ETs are going to start coming here in a big way. So if that can be, if that can feel good to us and not be so negative, then the past can be understood as in a softer way, because it is going to be sad when people find out all the details of that. And so hopefully it's going to be countered, because the way we look at this is important.
Well, Elizondo has argued for amnesty. Okay, it happened. We've been covering up. People have been ridiculed, maybe even killed, but let's start fresh. And maybe that's the way. Yeah, we can hold people to the past, but let's go fresh into, I don't know if I totally agree with that, but that's one strategy for, okay, the past happened and let's see what we can do now.
And that's what Steve Bassett advocates too. He's like, if we start getting into a mud fight over our pain and disgust and sadness over how much, over what has happened in these last 7 years, the lack of disclosure, the lack of all the things that have happened, we're not going to get as far long term. And I think that's what we have to understand, because these Congress people, some of them want to do a new story. These operatives or whatever they want to do, they want to write a new, they want to step into a better scenario, but how do we let them do that? You know what I mean? So it's to our advantage.
By becoming let's lay all the evidence out in the open. Let's see what we got. Let's roll out the bodies and the crap. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but that would be the way. Let's start informing the world. It's not a U.S. situation. It's a worldwide phenomenon, which I think Ron points out in his movie. And so, hey, but Ron, I wanted to ask you also, you sat down with Steve Burchett from Tennessee.
Tim, yeah.
It seems like he actually might have been an experiencer. He is so passionate about. Did you get a sense of where he was coming from? when you
Well,
sat down?
he's been like a sci-fi nerd aficionado of the topic for a long time.
Mhm.
And when I went to Washington to interview him for the movie, I haven't released the interview yet, but I actually sat in his office with multiple cameras and I laid out the whole thing from Roswell to now to him.
Mhm.
The first time anybody's visited a sitting member of Congress in his office on film and told them, you know, their version of what's going on with UFOs, and he knows about all this stuff, and so he's just a guy that is into it. Andre Carson is into it. You know, we have these people in office that you know, they have other lives and they have other interests, and there's a lot of them that are really into the topic. And you know what we were just talking about with accountability.
Mhm.
If this thing is as big as people think that it might be, then we're dealing with something that affects the entire power structure on the planet in profound ways. And so trying to figure out how to reveal what must be revealed at the same time we protect the fact that maybe there's energy sources that are not being made public. Well, can you imagine the accountability that you're never going to be able to forgive those people. And so, you know, we can give amnesty, but I think when we find out what we're giving amnesty for, we're going to wish we hadn't given amnesty. And then we have the whistleblower protection. That's a whole different thing. But to give amnesty to the people that have perpetuated this cover up and supported it, we don't know how bad the acts have actually been and how much humanity would have benefited had they not occurred.
Yeah, well, I want to ask Zenka and you guys this like really way out theory is that, you know, it may not just be government that's hiding the secret. It may actually be some ET, and that's a little manipulation of government that doesn't want maybe the abductions, all this kind of very subversive kind of dealings to come forward. I mean, is that too science fiction, or is
Not
that
at all?
like,
There's a huge case for that. That the you know, it's anecdotal at best, but they're obviously, you would think that if there are non-human intelligences engaging us and we've had some sort of communication with them at very deep secret levels, that those kind of arrangements have been made. And a lot of people would say that it's really the ETs. Donald Trump said it, didn't he? He said that it's the ETs that are controlling rather or not we get disclosure. And that that guy from Israel that's talked about the Galactic Council. So there's a, you know, there's a really good case that we're not going to be told for reasons that humans are not 100% in control of.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important that disclosure is done correctly because once the sea change happens, if it's a fear reality, then that's what we get and that's what we stay with, and it's going to be hard for us to course correct after that. And what we have before us is one of the best of the greatest opportunities humanity has ever seen for a renaissance like we've never imagined. Not only are we going to be traveling interstellar, you know what I mean? Like we're going to be rethinking health and all these other things. But the thing is we're gonna crash the plane, so to speak, if it's all if people aren't kind of ready. And so when these bombs drop, they end up in, that's a bad expression to say, but when these conversations happen, right, they're happening at the dinner table right now in America. Like my parents, all these people who are not even familiar with this, don't even know what they think about it, are starting to talk about it at the kitchen table. And that is where we want to be, because the truth of the matter is that more people believe in ETs in the US than God. You know what I mean? So the thing is that the population knows that this is happening. They want it to happen. And I would just say that, again, you know, the way I understand reality in general is that it is a reflection of our co-creation. And so when we say, oh, the aliens, they're abducting, and oh, they're, you know, part of them are bad. Well, that's because part of us are bad, and part of us are mutilating people in concentration camps. We're still abusing each other. We're still trafficking. So it's like it's like we're only as good, everything is only as good as we are together. And that's why we get to heal all this stuff. We get to forgive each other for whatever we've done. And we get to move on to create a ricochet of happiness and excitement toward all the possibilities of what we can do. Like, I want to travel off planet. I know, a lot, you know what I mean? Like, let's just do this. Let's have fun and let's move on and let's create stuff. Let's cry about it. Let's do it. But we can't point fingers at their races when we're doing even worse here.
Right. I also think Zenka, Ron, you don't really know Zenka's work, but Zenka is starting a citizens movement for our own experiential activation of contact. So Zenka, for people, for Ron and everyone watching while we're still waiting for the U.S. Senate hearings to begin, can you just give a little background on your research and how passionate you are about making contact, which was the name of my book, that you are creating with your research? It's citizens research here, Ron. And she's worth an interview on Mufon TV. So yeah, tell us.
Yeah, I mean, so Alan's part of it. It's this idea of saying, okay, so we're reading about contact that's happened, decades ago, or we're hearing about it in films, but I want to have that contact, and how do I do it? And that's the thing, that's the step, because this is so hard to understand until you've actually made contact. So how are we making contact? There's hundreds of thousands of people who've made contact, but we get to invite other people into it. And there's actually, my mind works like, well, wait, what's the fastest, funnest, cheapest way to make contact? How does it happen? How do I do it? What is it? You know what I mean? And I want to organize that knowledge because I want it to be faster for the people behind me. And so we've set up a nonprofit, an open data commons that asks the question, if someone knocks on our door at the website, can we give them a contact experience? And so we've measured, and we're getting 96% success rate in giving people contact, whether it's seeing a UFO, whether it's remote viewing off planet, whether it's getting radio contact, you know what I mean, that breaks the laws of physics. It's happening every day, and nobody's excluded from this. And so we have different teams, and we realize that in a team of 8 to 12 people where you can bond over 8 weeks, you can't help but make contact because you've set your intention, you're relaxed, you're in an open environment, you have no shame about your curiosity at that point. And then you have a guide like Alan that's walking you through the steps. So, he's having you
remote viewing. I'm using remote viewing as a way of accessing off-world beings. And this is something that in an interview with Richard Dolan and one of the insiders from the Loose Thread said this is exactly what the government is doing to find out who's in the UFOs too. They're remote viewing these craft. Of course, they're really well-trained remote viewers, and we're just training people in these classes, but we are making contact with our non-local extension of the mind, and people are having incredible success. So
yeah, make no mistake that the US government is using psychological consciousness tools to actually do this, as do ETs. So ETs use telepathy. There's a higher order of our senses. There's a higher order of intelligence. And so when we get, LightNet, so we have these teams starting in June. If you're, if you're curious, you can go to lightnet.org and you can check it out. And the other component is trying to bring together all the nonprofits, like what Ron is doing with Mufon, like the data set that Mark Sims gathered, and that ET Let's Talk gathered, and actually putting it into an open data commons so that we can say, if someone says, oh, they're a threat, well, we can say, well, the data shows otherwise. We've got people all over the world. 50% of the people that have made contact have had miracle healings. So that is research by Ray Hernandez that always makes me just go, wow. So if that's happening, and that's dozens and dozens of countries, and that's the data that's coming through like 5,000 people. So this is the kind of things that make us reconsider, like, what is the opportunity here for us to make contact with higher civilizations? What is the true nature of reality? What is the true nature of dimensional reality? Can we get on these ships? Can we go travel right now in the next 5 years? Well, yeah. So this is, this really puts together a strong force, and we're technology experts at LightNet. So we've got data scientists, we're building a search engine for this stuff so that we can share information. So we wanted to support organizations like Mufon and New Realities and all these things with some really good tech. And we also just built a spaceship in VR for meeting together and hanging out. So yeah.
That's pretty
Okay,
cool.
I just want any comment about that? I just also have two guests joining us here. Let me just take back my.
Hey, so now that you're bringing this whole reality thing into it, the trailer that we showed a minute ago wasn't actually the official trailer, and if it's okay, I'd like to play the official one. And the reason is because for Zenka, this whole film, the last third of it is exploring these things that we're talking about, and I think that the trail of breadcrumbs that is being started by the possibility of ETs and started by all the other kinds of encounters that we have with different types of non-human interactions are really leading us to more than just understanding that these things are part of our reality, but understanding our reality itself. In fact, the very lesson that we're being taught by these phenomena could very well be that is, you guys need to understand that you're basically in a simulation, and anything can happen in this reality. And so as we debate rather they're from Zeta Reticuli or they're interdimensional or they're time travelers, we have to come to grips with the fact that the answer may be all of the above, and that it may have more to do with our collective and subjective realities than it has to do with the reality of a flesh and blood origin of any of this stuff. And so that's why, if it's okay, let me play the trailer and then let's see.
And I have two special guests.
Don't forget to share your sound
after your trailer. So yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Okay. And Zig, I'd be curious what you think about this when you see it.
Yeah, did you share the sound? You're gonna have to click the box when you share screen.
I thought I did. Okay, hold on. So it's not working, you're saying?
No, just stop it and then start it again. If not, you can pass me the link. But yeah, I don't know why
Okay,
they make it
I'll get it.
so small when you do that.
Tell me if it's there now. Full size.
Yes.
There it goes.
We're not
Still
hearing
no
it.
sound.
No sound on our end here, Ron.
Yeah, Ron, just pass me the link real quick and I'll pop it in and share screen.
Oh, really? So it's still not working? Okay.
Or is it coming off of your computer?
While we're doing that, I just want to introduce two people who are going to be commenting on the program too, who have been following this.
Yay! The doctors are in.
Doctors JJ and Desiree Hurtak.
All right.
And about to see the Senate hearings here, JJ, Desiree. Any comment on what you're expecting for today?
I would say that what we're going to hear is pretty much a cautious review of data that's mostly out there already in circulation.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting anything that's super surprising.
Found out.
Zinc, I just sent it to you in the chat.
We'll see where it goes. Anyway, let's look at
Yeah.
Ron's film. Do we have that link?
We
Hi,
actually,
guys. How are you?
Hello.
We're very happy to be in touch with you, Ron. We thank all of our dear colleague in Sedona. And we're here to look carefully and clearly at the next phase of the public hearing
Brian, we highly recommend your new film. You really have covered a lot of bases on that. And I think you probably said a lot more than we're going to hear today, but let's see.
Yeah,
where it goes.
exactly.
You know, it's funny that it came out yesterday, the day before the hearings, and we have this little joke is like, well, Accidental Truth came out on the 18th, new congressional hearings on the 19th. Where are you going to go for answers?
So you got it, Zenka? Let's show it. There we go. Okay, full screen.
The UFO reality can no longer be denied. In 2017, the New York Times broke a front-page story about a shadowy government program.
Pentagon had this secret UFO monitoring agency which nobody knew about.
Don't ask me because I'm not going to tell you.
Instead of answers, we've been given a new narrative. The UAPs are not ours or any foreign governments.
Then the question is, whose are they?
You can ask the questions, but who you're going to ask them of. And you've got to make sure you're asking the right people.
There are many things that are out there in the ether that aren't officially brought to our attention.
How would it have to be officially brought to your attention? I'm bringing it to your attention.
Do you expect to see real answers in this report?
Honestly, I don't think so, Jake.
Memorable quote in that is, technology not of this earth, not made by man.
That's a profound moment.
So have you studied classified materials, but you just don't have them?
I just shouldn't say anything more.
Individuals at the Pentagon confirmed the Roswell spacecraft is real.
It's just a complete cover-up.
Some phenomena point to an interaction with consciousness.
Maybe the physical evolved from consciousness.
Life may exist in all sorts of forms. The question is, what's our definition of life?
So I wanted you to see that, Zenka, because the last section of the film really starts to open up a lot of the things that you were talking about.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. This is such an incredible mystery of a world and reality that we're living in. And it's so great to be co-creating it with people like you guys and the people watching this, because this is where, we used to have just the king and the narrative would derive from that. And then we used to have 4 network channels and the narrative would derive from that. Now we have like 50,000 YouTube channels. And so like the narrative is evolving to our heart's content. And so this is really exciting. And that film looks incredible. The Hurtaks have been like, you got to go to the premiere. I think I got 3 or 4 phone calls about it, because it is a really momentous thing to do that. And, we get to spend time thinking about what we want after we realize that this stuff is true. Now, what do we want? Like, let's spend in conversation. I did a lot of research, and people can think about what they don't want, and they can think about the past very well. But then when we think about the future, it takes that pause and digging in for one person to come up with an idea, and then another person, and another person, another person. So we get to, if this is the way reality works, we get to imagine what we actually want to happen in the future, and it'll make it all happen faster instead of just sitting there waiting for it to happen, right?
Yes, the buzzwords here are all-domain anomaly. And I've had the opportunity to talk to astronauts. I've talked to naval intelligence officers who do agree that a lot of this activity is in and out of our oceans. And so all domain would include not simply aerial phenomena, but that activity in the oceans that is now being recognized and perhaps provides a common basis.
The hearing will come to order. I'd first like to thank our witness, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, for testifying here and in today's earlier closed session, and for his long and distinguished career. Both the intelligence community and for testifying here and is the director of All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, so the intelligence community and his office in law to get to the bottom of the director of All-Domain.
Dr. Congress established this office in law to get to the bottom of the very serious problem of unidentified anomalous phenomenon. There is a vast and complex citizen engagement, and there's also very challenging scientific and technical hurdles. So we appreciate the willingness of Dr. Kirkpatrick to lean in on this issue and the work that he has accomplished thus far. And we look forward to both his opening statement and his presentation of examples of the work AARO has done. In late 2017, media reports surfaced about activities set in motion by the late long-serving Majority Leader Senator Harry Reid more than a decade ago. We learned that there was strong evidence of advanced technology reflected in the features and performance characteristics of many objects observed by our highly trained service members operating top-of-the-line military equipment. We learned that for the past 8 years, military pilots frequently encountered unknown objects in controlled airspace off both the east and west coast across the continental United States in test and training areas and ranges. We don't know where they come from, who made them, or how they operate. As former Deputy Secretary of Defense David Norquist observed, had any of these objects had the label "Made in China," there would be an uproar in the government and media. There would be no stone unturned and no effort spared to find out what we were dealing with. We can look at the recent incursion of the unidentified PRC high-altitude balloon as an example. But because of the UFO stigma, the response has been irresponsibly anemic and slow. Congress established AARO. We made it clear that we expect vigorous action. We added very substantial initial funding for the office, but despite our best efforts, the President's budget for fiscal years 23 and 24 requested only enough funding to defray the operating expenses of AARO. It included almost no funds to sustain the critical research and development necessary to support a serious investigation. It took a letter to Secretary Austin from Senator Rubio and me and 14 other senators to get the office temporary relief for the current fiscal year. In this hearing, I intend to probe a series of specific issues. In the recent incidents where multiple objects were shot down over North America, it seemed that Pentagon leadership did not turn to AARO office to play a leading role in advising the combatant commander. We need to know whether this will continue. We need to know whether the leadership in DoD will bring AARO into the decision-making process in a visible way. And we need to know what role AARO will play in interagency coordination after the NSC working group disbands. In the fiscal year 2023 National Defense and Intelligence Authorization Acts, Congress established a direct reporting chain from the AARO Director to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. The role of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security is limited to providing administrative support. We need to know how this direction is being implemented. UAP are frequently observed flying in extremely high or very low speeds and come in various sizes and shapes. During the recent shootdowns over North America, DoD disclosed that filters on radar systems were adjusted to allow for detection and tracking of diverse sets of objects for the first time. While opening the aperture can overload the real-time analytic process, we cannot keep turning a blind eye to surveillance data that is critical to detecting and tracking UAP. We need to know whether Dr. Kirkpatrick can achieve the necessary control over sensor filters and the storage and access to raw surveillance data to find UAP anomalies. Finally, one of the tasks Congress set for AARO is serving as an open door for witnesses of UAP events or participants in government activities related to UAPs to come forward securely and disclose what they know without fear of retribution for any possible violations of previously signed non-disclosure agreements. Congress mandated that AARO set up a publicly discoverable and accessible process for safe disclosure. While we know that AARO has already conducted a significant number of interviews, many referred by Congress, we need to set up a public process and we need to know where that effort stands. With that, I'd like to turn to Senator Ernst for her opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Kirkpatrick, for your testimony today. I'll keep these remarks very brief so that we have maximum time for your briefing. The recent downing of the Chinese surveillance balloon and 3 other objects underscores the need for domain awareness. Adversaries like China and Russia are working to hold U.S. interests, including our homeland, at risk. That's why your testimony is so important. And I so look forward to a progress update on the establishment of your office. As members know, your office evolved from the Navy-led Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, known as AARO. Dr. Kirkpatrick, your extensive background in science and technology, research and development, and space makes you well-suited to discuss these emerging challenges. My priority is that we understand the full range of threats posed by our adversaries in all domains. That is what the Joint Force needs to be prepared to fight and win in defense of our nation. This committee needs to know about Chinese or Russian advanced technology programs to exploit our vulnerabilities, and it needs to know whether your office, along with the IC, has detected potential Chinese or Russian capabilities to surveil or attack us. Finally, we need to ensure efficient interagency coordination. Multiple elements of the DoD and IC own a piece of this mission. To add value, AARO's efforts cannot be redundant with others. Thank you again. We look forward to your testimony.
Dr. Kirkpatrick, you can give your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman Gillibrand, Ranking Member Ernst, distinguished members of the subcommittee. It's a privilege to be here today to testify on the Defense's efforts to address unidentified anomalous phenomena. First, I want to thank Congress for its extensive and continued partnership as the Department works to better understand and respond to UAP in an effort to minimize technical and intelligence surprise. Unidentified objects in any domain pose potential risks to safety and security, particularly from military personnel and capabilities. Congress and DoD agree that UAP cannot remain unexamined or unaddressed. We are grateful for sustained congressional engagement on this issue, which paved the way for the DoD's establishment of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in July of last year. Though AARO is still a young office, the spotlight on UAP in recent months underscores the importance of its work and the need for UAP to be taken seriously as a matter of national security. All leadership that I've had the pleasure of working with, whether DoD, IC, DOE, civil, scientific, or industrial, view Congress as a critical partner in this endeavor. AARO has accomplished much in the last 9 months since it was established. The AARO team of more than 36 experts is organized around 4 functional areas: operations, scientific research, integrated analysis, and strategic communications. In the 9 months since AARO's establishment, we've taken important steps to involve and improve UAP data collection, standardize the department's UAP internal reporting requirements, and implement a framework for rigorous scientific and intelligence analysis, allowing us to resolve cases in a systematic and prioritized manner. Meanwhile, consistent with legislative direction, AARO is also carefully reviewing and researching the U.S. government's UAP-related historical record. AARO is leading a focused effort to better characterize, understand, and attribute UAP, with priority given to UAP reports by DoD and IC personnel in or near areas of national security importance. DoD fully appreciates the eagerness from many quarters, especially here in Congress and in the American public, to quickly resolve every UAP encountered across the globe from the distant past through today. It's important to note, however, AARO is the culmination of decades of DoD, intelligence community, and congressionally directed efforts to successfully resolve UAP encountered first and foremost by U.S. military personnel, specifically Navy and Air Force pilots. The law establishing AARO is ambitious, and it will take time to realize the full mission. We cannot answer decades of questions about UAP all at once, but we must begin somewhere. While I assure you that AARO will follow scientific evidence wherever it leads, I ask for your patience as DoD first prioritizes safety and security of our military personnel and installations in all domains. After all, a UAP encountered first by highly capable DoD and IC platforms, featuring the nation's most advanced sensors, are those UAP most likely to be resolved by my office, assuming the data can be collected. If AARO succeeds in first improving the ability of military personnel to quickly and confidently resolve UAP they encounter, I believe that in time we will have greatly advanced the capability of the entire United States government, including its civilian agencies, to resolve UAP. However, it would be naive to believe that the resolution of all UAP can be solely accomplished by the DoD and IC alone. We will need to prioritize collection and leverage authorities for monitoring all domains within the continental United States. AARO's ultimate success will require partnerships with the interagency, industry partners, academia, and the scientific community, as well as the public. AARO is partnering with the services, intelligence community, DOE, as well as civil partners and across the U.S. government to tap into the resources of the interagency. The UAP challenge is more an operational and scientific issue than it is an intelligence issue. As such, we are working with industry, academia, and the scientific community, which bring their own resources, ideas, and expertise to this challenging problem set. Robust collaboration and peer review across a broad range of partners will promote greater objectivity and transparency in the study of UAP. I want to underscore today that only a very small percentage of UAP reports display signatures that could reasonably be described as anomalous. The majority of unidentified objects reported to AARO demonstrate mundane characteristics of balloons, unmanned aerial systems, clutter, natural phenomena, or other readily explainable sources. While a large number of cases in our holdings remain technically unresolved, this is primarily due to a lack of data associated with those cases. Without sufficient data, we are unable to reach defendable conclusions that meet the high scientific standards we set for resolution, and I will not close a case that I cannot defend the conclusions of. I recognize that this answer is unsatisfying to those who in good faith assume that what they see with their eyes, with their cameras, and with their radars is incontrovertible evidence of extraordinary characteristics and performance. Yet time and again, with sufficient scientific quality data, it is fact that UAP often, but not always, resolve into readily explainable sources. Humans are subject to deception and illusions, sensors to unexpected responses and malfunctions, and in some cases, intentional interference. Getting to the handful of cases that pass this level of scrutiny is the mission of AARO. That is not to say that UAP, once resolved, are no longer of national security interest, however. On the contrary, learning that a UAP isn't of exotic origin, but is instead just a quadcopter or balloon, leads to the question of who is operating that quadcopter and to what purpose. The answers to those questions will inform potential national security or law enforcement responses. AARO is a member of the department's support to the administration's Tiger Team effort to deal with stratospheric objects such as the PRC high-altitude balloon. When previously unknown objects are successfully identified, it is AARO's role to quickly and efficiently hand off such readily explainable objects to the intelligence, law enforcement, or operational safety communities for further analysis and appropriate action. In other words, AARO's mission is to turn UAP into SEP, somebody else's problem. The U.S. government, the DoD and the IC in particular, has tremendous capabilities to deal with those encountered objects. In the wake of the PRC HAB event, the interagency is working to better integrate and share information to address identifiable stratospheric objects, but that is not AARO's lane. Meanwhile, for the few cases in all domains, space, air, and sea, that do demonstrate potentially anomalous characteristics, AARO exists to help the DoD, IC, and interagency resolve those anomalous cases. In doing so, AARO is approaching these cases with the highest level of objectivity and analytic rigor. This includes physically testing and employing modeling and simulation to validate our analyses and underlying theories, then peer reviewing those results within the U.S. government, industry partners, and appropriately cleared academic institutions before reaching any conclusions. I should also state clearly for the record that in our research, AARO has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics. In the event sufficient scientific data were ever obtained that a UAP encountered can only be explained by extraterrestrial origin, we are committed to working with our interagency partners at NASA to appropriately inform U.S. government's leadership of its findings. For those few cases that have leaked to the public previously and subsequently commented on by the U.S. government, I encourage those who hold alternative theories or views to submit your research to credible peer-reviewed scientific journals. AARO is working very hard to do the same. That is how science works, not by blog or social media. We know that there is tremendous public interest in UAP and a desire for answers from AARO. By its very nature, the UAP challenge has for decades lent itself to mystery, sensationalism, and even conspiracy. For that reason, AARO remains committed to transparency, accountability, and to sharing as much with the American public as we can, consistent with our obligation to protect not only intelligence sources and methods, but U.S. and allied capabilities. However, AARO's work will take time if we are committed to do it right. It means adhering to the scientific method and the highest standards of research integrity. It means being methodical and scrupulous. It means withholding judgment in favor of evidence. It means following the data where it leads, wherever it leads. It means establishing scientific peer-reviewed theoretical underpinnings of observed data, and AARO is committed to all of those standards. I'm proud of AARO's progress over the last 9 months. Much remains to be done, but the hard work is underway. Thank you for your continued support. And before we turn to questions, I'm going to walk you through some of our analytical trends and a couple of cases that we've prepared. So one of the things that AARO does is high integrity analysis, as I've said. This chart represents the trend analysis of all the cases in AARO's holdings, right, to date. What you'll see on the left is a histogram of all of our reported sightings as a function of altitude. So most of our sightings occur in the 15 to 25,000 foot range, and that is ultimately because that's where a lot of our aircraft are. On the far right upper corner, you'll see a breakout of the morphologies of all of the UAP that are reported. Over half, about 52% of what's been reported to us, are round orb spheres. The rest of those break out into all kinds of different other shapes. The gray box is essentially there's no data on what its shape is. Either it wasn't reported or the sensor did not collect it. The bottom map is a heat map of all reporting areas across the globe that we have available to us. What you'll notice is that there is a heavy, what we call collection bias, both in altitude and in geographic location. That's where all of our sensors exist. That's where our training ranges are, that's where our operational ranges are, that's where all of our platforms are. In the middle, what we have done is reduce the most typically reported UAP characteristics to these fields, mostly round, mostly 1 to 4 meters, white, silver, translucent, metallic, 10,000 to 30,000 feet, with apparent velocities from stationary to Mach 2. No thermal exhausts usually detected. We get intermittent radar returns, we get intermittent radio returns, and we get intermittent thermal signatures. That's what we're looking for and trying to understand what that is. Next slide. So I'm going to walk you through 2 cases that we've declassified recently. This first one is an MQ-9 in the Middle East, observing that blow up, which is an apparent spherical object via EO sensors. Those are not IR. If you want to go ahead and click that and play it, you'll see it come through the top of the screen. There it goes, and then the camera will slew to follow it. You'll see it pop in and out of the field of view there. This is essentially all of the data we have associated with this event from some years ago. It is going to be virtually impossible to fully identify that just based off of that video. Now, what we can do and what we are doing is keeping that as part of that group of 52% to see what are the similarities, what are the trends across all of these, do we see these in a particular distribution, do they all behave the same or not? As we get more data, we will be able to go back and look at these in a fuller context. How are we going to get more data? We are working with the Joint Staff to issue guidance to all the services and commands that will then establish what are the reporting requirements, the timeliness, and all of the data that is required to be delivered to us and retained from all of the associated sensors. That historically hasn't been the case, and it's been happenstance that data has been collected. Next slide. This particular event, South Asia MQ-9, looking at another MQ-9, and what's highlighted there in that red circle is an object that flies through the screen. Unlike the previous one, This one actually shows some really interesting things that everyone thought was truly anomalous to start with. First of all, it's a high-speed object that's flying in the field of regard of 2 MQ-9s. Second, it appears to have this trail behind it, all right, which at first blush you would think that looks like a propulsion trail. In reality, if you want to play the first slide, we'll show you what that looks like in real time, our first video. So we're looking at that. There it goes. Why don't you play it again and then pause it halfway through? Right there. All right, if you might be able to see that trail there behind it. That's actually not a real trail. That is a sensor artifact. Each one of those little blobs is actually a representation of the object as it's moving through. And later in the video, as the camera slews, that trail actually follows the direction of the camera, not the direction of the object. We pulled these apart frame by frame. We were able to demonstrate that that is essentially a readout overlap of the image. It's a shadow image, right? It's not real. Further, if you later follow this all the way to end, it starts to resolve itself into that blob that's in that picture in the top left, right? And if you squint, it looks like an aircraft because it actually turns out to be an aircraft. Go ahead and put that on. So you'll see the tail sort of pop out there. And so what you're looking at is, this is in the infrared, this is the heat signature off of the engines of a commuter aircraft that happened to be flying in the vicinity of where those 2 MQ-9s were at. Why am I showing you this? So the first one that I showed you, we don't have resolved yet, right? That is an unresolved case we are still studying. This one we can resolve. But this is the kind of data that we have to work with and the type of analysis that we have to do, which can be quite extensive when you have to pull these apart frame by frame. Further, we're now matching all of this with the models of all of those imaging sensors so that I can say, I can recreate this. I can actually show how the sensor is going to respond. All of these sensors don't necessarily respond the way you think they do, especially out in the world and in the field. And I believe that's all I have, and I will open it up for your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kirkpatrick. Can you just give us some raw numbers of how many UAPs you've analyzed, how many have been resolved, and sort of in what buckets, and then how many are still left to be resolved? Just an update from your January public report where it was 366 or something, and about 150 were balloons, and about 24 were drones. You know, just give us an update if you have one.
Sure. So as of this week, we are tracking over a total of 650 cases. Now, the report in January basically said about half of the ones at that time, about 150, were likely balloon-like or something like that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they're resolved.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so what? Let me walk everyone through what our analytic process looks like. We have essentially a 5-step process, right? So we get our cases in with all the data. We create a case for that event. My team does a preliminary scrub of all of those cases as they come in, just to sort out, do we have any information that says this is in one of those likely categories? It's likely a balloon, it's likely a bird, it's likely some other object. Or we don't know. Then we prioritize those based off of where they are. Are they attached to a national security area? Does it show some anomalous phenomenology that is of interest? If it's just a spherical thing that's floating around with the wind and it has no payload on it, that's going to be less important than something that has a payload on it, which will be less important than something that's maneuvering, right? So there's sort of a hierarchy of just binning the priorities because we can't do all of them at once. Once we do that and we prioritize them, when we take that package of data in that case, and I have set up 2 teams, think of this as a red team, blue team, or a competitive analysis. I have an intelligence community team made up of intelligence analysts, and I have an S&T team made up of scientists and engineers and the people that actually build a lot of these sensors, or physicists, because, you know, if you're a physicist, you can do anything, right? But they're not associated with the intel community. They're not intel officers. So they look at this through the lens of the sensor, of what the data says. We give that package to both teams. The intelligence community is going to look at it through the lens of the intelligence record and what they assess, and their intel tradecraft, which they have very specific rules and regulations on how they do that. Scientific community, technical community is going to look at it through the lens of what is the data telling me? What is the sensor doing? What would I expect a sensor response to be? And back that out. Those 2 groups give us their answers. We then adjudicate. If they agree, then I am more likely to close that case if they agree on what it is. If they disagree, we will have an adjudication. We'll bring them together, we'll take a look at the differences, we'll adjudicate why do you say one thing and you say another. We will then come to a case recommendation. That'll get written up by my team. That then goes to a senior technical advisory group, which is outside of all of those people, made up of senior technical folks and intel analysts and operators from retired out of the community. And they essentially peer review what that case recommendation is. They write their recommendations, that comes back to me, I review it, we make a determination, and I'll sign off one way or the other. And then that will go out as the case determination. Once we have an approved web portal to hang the unclassified stuff, we will downgrade and declassify things and put it out there. In the meantime, we're putting a lot of these on our classified web portal, where we can then collaborate with the rest of the community so they can see what's going on. That's, in a nutshell, that is the process, right? So because of that, that takes time. So of those over 650, we've prioritized about half of them to be of anomalous, interesting value. And now we have to go through those and go, how much do I have actual data for? Because if all I have is a operator report that says, I saw X, Y, or Z, my assessment is A, B, or C, that's not really sufficient. That's a good place to start, but I have to have data. I have to have radar data, I have to have EO data, I have to have thermal data, I have to have overhead data, and we need to look at all that. Now, from a big picture perspective, I still have, that's all still very valuable data. And we're looking at applying a lot of things, new tools, analytic tools like natural language processing. So I can go across all of those reports and look for commonalities. How many of them are being described as round spherical objects that are maneuvering? How many of them are not maneuvering? How many of them seem to have a plume to it or note? That's also going to be very valuable to give us more of a global picture and a trends analysis of what are we seeing, right? And help us get to the determination. So go back to your question, ma'am. We have this next quarterly report will be coming out here pretty soon. Our next annual report, you all have given us, moved it up to June, July. We're going to be having that done about that time frame, and we will have we'll be combining a whole number of reports into that one. I think we're currently sitting at around, if I remember correctly, we're around 20 to 30-ish are about halfway through that analytic process. A handful of them have made it all the way out to the other side, gone through peer review. We've got case closure reports done and signed. We're going to get faster as we get more people on board and we get more of the community tools to automate some of the analysis that has to be done.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Kirkpatrick, the ODNI annual threat assessment states that China's space activities are designed to erode U.S. influence across military, technological, economic, and diplomatic spheres. Likewise, Russia will remain a key space competitor. In the course of your work, have you become aware of any Chinese or Russia technical advancements to surveil or attack U.S. interests?
So that's a great question. Part of what we have to do as we go through these, especially the ones that show signatures of advanced technical capabilities, is determine if there's a foreign nexus. That's really hard if what we observe doesn't have a Chinese or Russian flag on the side of it. Now, I think it is prudent to say of the cases that are showing some sort of advanced technical signature, of which we're talking single percentages of the entire population of cases we have. I am concerned about what that nexus is, and I have indicators that some are related to foreign capabilities. We have to investigate that with our IC partners, and as we get evidence to support that, that gets then handed off to the appropriate IC agency to investigate. Again, it becomes an SEP at that point.
Yeah, somebody else's problem.
Right.
Very good. Thank you. Yes. Is it possible that the Chinese or Russian advanced technologies could be causing some of these anomalous behaviors? And you said there seems to be some indicators. So just for us today, could you describe potential threat that might exist out there if they are foreign nexus?
In order to do this research appropriately, we have to also be cognizant of what is the state of the art in development across the S&T community. What are the DARPAs of the world doing? What's the horizon scanning of emerging technologies appropriate to this subcommittee? What is happening out there? And if somebody could accelerate that capability, how would that manifest itself and what would it look like? And do those signatures match what we're seeing? There are emerging capabilities out there that in many instances, Russia and China, well, China in particular, are on par or ahead of us in some areas. Right. So previously, I used to be the Defense Department's intelligence officer for science and technical intelligence. That was our job, was to look for what does all that look like. And then, my last several years, of course, in Space Command doing space. The adversary is not waiting. They are advancing, and they're advancing quickly. If I were to put on some of my old hats, I would tell you they are less risk averse at technical advancement than we are. Right? They are just willing to try things and see if it works. Are there capabilities that could be employed against us in both an ISR and a weapons fashion? Absolutely. Do I have evidence that they're doing it in these cases? No, but I have concerning indicators.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that is why it's so important that you are working with the intelligence community as well, because you have the science, the data background, but you also need to know from various sources what adversaries may be working on. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rhodes. Well, thank you, Chair Gillibrand, Ranking Member Ernst. This is a really important hearing. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Kirkpatrick, for your service to the country. And as a former systems analyst myself, I really appreciate your flow chart, the description of the process, and particularly the trends analysis going forward, how that's going to help us. And you talked about language, the large LLMs, the large language models, artificial intelligence. That's really going to help us in the hunt forward. Predictive analysis, I think, to some of your point, what we're worried about. But I want to focus on Nevada because I want to talk about the impact of UAPs on aviation safety. So when it comes to unidentified aerial phenomena, one of my first concerns is really about the safety of Nevada's military aviator. So we have airmen stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, naval aviators flying at Naval Air Station Fallon, and service members from across the world training at the Nevada Test and Training Range. I know you know all this. And unfortunately, the existence of advanced UAPs in the U.S. airspace and over U.S. military installations, not a new phenomenon. The Navy's officially acknowledged that between 2004 and 2021, 11 near misses occurred involving UAPs that required pilot action and follow-up reports. As a result, in 2019, the Navy established a protocol for pilots to report on their dangerous encounters. So could you speak to any ongoing efforts within DoD to ensure the safety of our aviators with a potential UAP encounter? And what's your relationship with Northcom, NORAD, Spacecom when it comes to this immediate real-time response and how they're right there in the moment, right?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So let me start with, my relationship with the commands are very good. I just came back from sitting down with General Van Herk and all the J staff out at Northcom a couple weeks ago, talking through exactly what we need to do to help them get their arms around this. We are also working very closely with Joint Staff, and the Joint Staff has just been very outstanding in helping work through policy and guidance issues to the forces and to the services. And I would like to just make sure that we message back to all of the operators the importance of their reporting and the fact that you're about to get a bunch of new requirements that we're issuing through the Joint Staff on all of the data that we're going to need you to save and report back to us. It is invaluable, and we are working to try to take the most advantage of that to learn what it is that we're trying to mitigate. To get directly to your question, first thing that we're doing is normalizing our reporting, right? We're standardizing our reporting and the requirements associated with that. Guidance from the Joint Staff, I think, goes out maybe this week, maybe next week, that we've been working with them for some months that does exactly what I just said. It gives them timelines, it gives them requirements, it gives them, here's all the data you have to have, and you got to retain it. The next thing that comes after that is a plan order that will go out to the commands for mitigation and response. So there's a couple of things that we have to do. One, I need to work with the commands and with the IC and with our outside of our DoD and IC partners to extend our collection posture targeted at some of these key areas that you saw on that heat map. That have a lot of activity so that we can turn on extra collection when an operator sees something. So part of this is generating as a response function, what we call a tactic, technique, and procedure for an operator. When he sees something, calls back to the operations floor, they can turn on additional collection. What does that collection look like? How do I bring all that together so I can get more data on what is that thing?
Can I ask really quickly,
Sure.
do you have the authorities you need to extend your collection posture between agencies or branches of the military? Because that seems to me to maybe be a sticking point. I know my time's just about up. I'd love to follow up about your risk management methodologies for some of these, but do you need any authorities that you don't have to get the data?
There are
you need?
some authorities that we need. We currently are operating under Title 10 authorities, but we have good relationships across the other agencies, but having additional authorities for collection, tasking, counterintelligence,
That's something.
those are all things that would be helpful, yes.
Thank you.
To follow up, Dr. Kirkpatrick, will you help us write that language so we
doing a
can put it in
live
the defense bill this
commentary
year so that we know what
on
authorities you
the
need?
New Realities
Thank you.
channel on YouTube.
We're going to start second round, so if you want to stay, you can ask another round. I have at least 3 more questions, so. Do you want to go right now, so you, in case you have to leave? Oh, I could, I do. Yeah, go ahead. Go-
That would be great. I'm going to stay on the drones issue because obviously we also have
YouTube New Realities channel.
last February, the Chinese spy balloon, it did cross through the U.S. airspace, shot down by a Sidewinder missile fired from an F-22. Sidewinders cost us close to $500,000 each. So, given the cost of these missiles, the cost per flight, all of these other things, like I said, follow up on the authorities, your methodologies, the data collection, they can help us in other ways. But how do you think we can develop a sustainable, affordable response to UAPs where we need to, that will definitely violate our airspace, not may, definitely violate our airspace every chance that they can get because they're our adversaries. They want this information. So what do you think some cost-effective measures might be that we can get what we need out of that or take them down, whatever's appropriate, whatever the appropriate measure is, let's put it that
So
way.
that is actually wrapped into the plan org that we're working with joint staff to send out. What do the commands need from both a capabilities perspective for kinetic and non-kinetic engagements? What are the response functions of the particular wings or Navy, what have you? And then what authorities do they need?
Right.
So one of the challenges that we've seen is there's an authorities issues with the owners, operators of those ranges that they need to work through, and we're working that with joint staff and OSD. So big picture, we need to do all that. If you want to get down to the specifics there are non-kinetic options to engage pretty much everything, right? Whether it's electronic warfare, whether it's, laser technology.
That's where this data,
That's
having the
right.
good data collection, predictive
Correct.
analytics, you can
Inform.
make some assumptions on possibilities.
That's right. And we will inform recommendations back to the department on here's what could work, here's what we've seen work, here's what doesn't work.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to talk a little bit about your logistics, who you report to, how that's going, whether you need different reporting lines. By congressional legislation, your office is administratively located with the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, but you're not substantively subordinate to the Undersecretary. Rather, you are a direct report to the Deputy Secretary. Are you taking direction directly from the Deputy Secretary? Are you able to meet and brief the Deputy Secretary? Is the Office of USD INS working with you to have the right framework?
So USD INS, I currently report to USD INS until they come up with the plan for how they're going to implement legislation. DOD and DNI are working through that now. I'd have to refer you back to USD INS on what their plan is.
Do I need to update your reporting structure in the next defense bill, or is this something that you think will work its way out, or does it need further clarity?
I think they're planning on coming back to you with an answer on what that plan is, and I think at that time that will inform what you want to do.
Okay, thank you. As you know, Dr. Kirkpatrick, Congress has mandated that your office establish a discoverable and accessible electronic method for potential witnesses of UAP incidents and potential participants in government UAP-related activities to contact your office and tell their stories. Congress also set up a process whereby people subject to non-disclosure agreements, preventing them from disclosing what they may have witnessed or participated in, could tell you what they know without risk of retribution from or violation of their NDAs. Have you submitted a public-facing website product for approval to your superiors, and how long has it been under review?
I have. We submitted the first version of that before Christmas.
And do you have an estimate from them when they will respond and when you'll have feedback on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. We will author a letter asking for that timely response to your superiors. When do you expect that you will establish a public-facing discoverable and access portal for people to use to contact your office as the law requires?
So I would like to first say thank you all very much for referring the witnesses that you have thus far to us. I appreciate that. We've brought in nearly 24 so far. It's been very helpful. I'd ask that you continue to do that until we have an approved plan. We have a multi-phased approach for doing that we've been socializing and have submitted for approval sometime. Once that happens, then we should be able to push all that out and get this a little more automated.
Great.
What I would ask, though, is as you all continue to refer to us and refer witnesses to us, I'd appreciate if you do that. Please try to prioritize the ones that you want to do, because we do have a small research staff dealing with that.
Thank you. And then do you have any plans for public engagement that you want to share now that you think it's important that the public knows what the plan is?
So we have a number of public engagement recommendations according to our strategic plan. All of those have been submitted for approval. They have to be approved by USDINS. We are waiting for approval to go do that.
Okay, I will follow up on that. And then my last question is about the integration of departments, UAP operations, research analysis, and strategic communications. During the recent UAP incidents over North America, it didn't appear that you were allowed to play that role. Do you agree that the public perception is generally that you and your office did not appear to play a major role in the department's response to the detection of objects over North America? What can you tell us that's going on behind the scenes from your perspective? And in the after-action assessment process, is there awareness that there is a need to operate differently in the future and a commitment to doing so?
When the objects were first detected, I got called by Joint Staff Leadership to come in late one night to review events as they were unfolding and to give them an assessment based on what we knew at that time. I did that, worked with the Director of Joint Staff, the J2 and the J3 that night and over the couple of following days on what are the types of things that we are tracking from an unidentified object perspective, what databases do we use, those sorts of things for known objects, known tracking. Beyond that, the response, I would have to refer you back to the White House for the decision on how they did the response. We did not play a role in what you would respond, other than that initial advice on what we are seeing and how we are seeing it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Kirkpatrick, I know that your office has gotten a lot of attention recently, and of course, any new agency, there tends to be a push to increase size and funding. We want to make sure that you're able to meet your goals, but what I also need to ensure is that we're not duplicating or replicating existing functions and creating redundancy within DoD and the interagency. So what steps are you taking right now to make sure that your particular office and function is unique to any of the other agencies that might be involved in these types of cases?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would like to lay down, here's what my sort of my mission and my goal and my vision here. So the vision is at some point in the future, you should not need an AARO. If I'm successful in what I'm doing, we should be able to normalize everything that we're doing into existing processes, functions, agencies, and organizations, and make that part of their mission and their role. Right now, the niche that we form is really going after the unknowns. I think you articulated it early on, this is a hunt mission for what might somebody be doing in our backyard that we don't know about. All right, well, that is what we are doing, right? But at some point, we should be able to normalize that. That's why it's so important, the work we're doing with Joint Staff, to normalize that into DoD policy and guidance. We are bringing in all of our interagency partners. So NASA is providing a liaison for us. I have FBI liaison, I have OSI liaison, I have service liaisons. Half of my staff come from the IC, half of my staff come from other scientific and technical backgrounds. I have DOE. And so what we're trying to do is ensure, again, as I make UAP into SEP, they get handed off to the people that is their mission to go do, so that we aren't duplicating that. I'm not going to go chase the Chinese high-altitude balloon, for example. That's not my job. It's not an unknown, and it's not anomalous anymore. Now it goes over to them. Right.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I wanted just to follow up on the filters for surveillance. Outside observers have speculated that DoD sets filters on certain sensors to eliminate objects that are moving really fast or slow, because what we are looking for militarily are conventional aircraft and missiles. UAP that doesn't fit into these programs would thereby be weeded out and never noticed. This speculation was proven to be true during the UAP incidents over North America, where DoD publicly acknowledged that we were able to start seeing these UAPs only when we opened up these filters. Obviously, our military operators cannot be overloaded with objects that are not conventional aircraft or missiles. Can you nonetheless make sure that the raw data is being captured and subsequently processed, so that your office knows what's really out there? And is that going to cost money? Will you expect to pay for that money out of AARO's budget?
One of the key tenets that we're trying to do in our science plan is understand what those signatures are. So we get all the raw, for example, radar data prior to the scrubbing and filtering to allow it to enter into our weapons systems and our detection systems. We are now taking all that data and cross-correlating it to what pilots are saying they're seeing, or other observations from other operators. What that allows us to do is then see if there are any signatures in that data that I can pull out, generate what we'll call automatic target recognition algorithms that allow us to then use that signature associated with a observed UAP, whatever that UAP may be. We will then make those recommendations of what those changes should be back to the department. So the Deputy Secretary had asked me last October to make those recommendations. What changes do we need to make to radars, to platforms, to detection systems and algorithms, to pull on those algorithms and make those changes? That's going to take some time. That's where the research and development comes in, right? It's not instantaneous. Right now, a lot of the, I won't say, a lot of the things that fall outside of the ranges of those filters have been identified by people in the loop, and you can't have people in the loop all the time. It's just not cost effective. So part of our budget is working through what does that look like, and then making those recommendations back to the big program offices for them to put into changes in acquisition.
My last question is about the academic community. Can you give us an update on sort of how you collaborate with the academic community, and whether how the independent study being done by NASA complements AARO's work?
Sure. Two questions, so I'm going to try to make it quick. In 1979, Carl Sagan said, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence." I would go one step further, and I would say extraordinary claims require not only extraordinary evidence, but extraordinary science. And so how do you do that? You do that with the scientific method, right? And so as AARO is developing and implementing its science plan, it has to do so grounded in a solid foundation of scientific theory across the entire range of hypotheses that have been presented for what UAP are. That range spans adversary breakthrough technology on one hand, known objects and phenomena in the middle, all the way to the extreme theories of extraterrestrials. All of that has physics-based signatures associated with it, whether it's theoretical from the academic community, known from things like hypersonic weapons, or adversary breakthrough technologies, as we've talked about before, or the known objects that we have to go measure. The idea is across that entire range, you have to come up with peer-reviewed scientific basis for all of it. The academic community plays a very big role on the one end of the spectrum, the intelligence community on the other end of the spectrum, and then measurement in the middle. Once I have those signatures identified in validated peer-reviewed documents, then I have something to point to for all that data. Because all that data is going to match one of those signatures, right? And then I can go, well, it's that and not that, or it's that. And that helps us go through all that. Where NASA comes in and the study that they're doing, which I'm supporting, is really looking at the unclassified data sources that might be used to augment our classified data sources to understand if there's a signature there we can pull on. So very similar to the radars, but civil capabilities. So for example, we have a lot of climate science satellites, for example, that look at Earth. Lots of them. How many of those is the data valuable in seeing these kinds of objects? The challenge in that is those platforms don't necessarily have the resolution you need. So if you remember the slide I put up there with the trends, the size of the objects we're looking for are typically reported to be 1 to 4 meters. Well, the resolution of many of the climate science civil satellites is much larger than that, which means you'd have a hard time picking out something that's smaller than a pixel on the imagery on the data. That's not to say all of it's not useful, and there are ways of pulling through that data and going through. That is what NASA is focused on right now. So what are some other data sources that could be used? In addition, things like open source and crowdsourcing of data. We're exploring public-private partnerships, ma'am, as you know, we've talked about in the past, to look at, is there a way to smartly crowdsource additional data that might be useful to augment some of my classified sources? And what does that look like? And how would we do it so that we're not overwhelmed by, everybody who wants to take a picture of everything?
Like to tell the committee before we close? Or do you have another round? Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell the committee before we close?
Thank you very much for allowing us to come and share a little bit of insight into what AARO is up to and what we're doing. I hope to be able to share a whole lot more in the future. We have a lot of work to do, so if you don't hear from me outside, it's because we've got a lot of work to do.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kirkpatrick. Thank you for the hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I guess that was just a kind of joke there. Okay. All right, Ron, we're back. Zenka, JJ, Desiree. What was your response, JJ, Desiree?
It was a carefully crafted response based upon radar signatures that needed to be analyzed more effectively, the need for peer review to be expanded, the nuances of Dr. Kirkpatrick's paper followed the technical guidelines that have been in operation since Project Blue Book. I did not expect any significant updates. He was very careful in what he said and well schooled in his branch of technology. I've, as a participant at the first disclosure conference in Washington, D.C. in May of 1995, with Dr. John Mack from Harvard University, would say that there was a gross omission of testimony from key players in the world scientific community who know that there's more to the story. That is, we're dealing with non-technical life forms that have the ability to manifest and demanifest in a variety of ways, suggesting we need more of a paraphysical approach, i.e. things that have been analyzed and developed by experts at Stanford Research Institute and other think tanks.
Right. I thought it was, I didn't expect for much, so that's what we got. But with that said, it was an interesting overview regarding an office that's been around for 9 months. And I think it was very clear that although he was looking at some public witnesses that the Senate had passed to him, the majority of his data is from the military. And of course, right after this, now they're going to do a private hearing with the Senate. And, 650 cases in 9 months, review and a general review, he didn't say it was a finalized review, is not bad. So I'm hoping that at some point, and I don't expect it to be recent, they'll come up with being able to say a little bit more. I thought the first video they showed was very interesting. They didn't do a conclusion on it. And that was fascinating, although there's a lot of drones. And we'll talk about drones in a few minutes, but I wanted to hear Ron James.
But I just wanted to say before Ron that the one sentence that was disturbing was saying, we don't have any evidence of extraterrestrial technology. Well, how would they know it's evidence of extraterrestrial technology if they're not looking at that possibility? And that's like shooting themselves in the foot. It's like, what would that look like if they can't, if it's not Chinese or Russian, which Elizondo has already said, and pointed to off-world technologies, why wouldn't it be extraterrestrial?
Absolutely. I would say that they should go back and revisit the film documentation taken in 1995. Dr. John Mack from Harvard and I presented evidence of working with children and adults in South Africa and Zimbabwe who physically saw in mass objects and entities that could change physical form and had positive results rather than negative or fear-based results. So,
and one of the things we can also talk about is the balloons. Maybe
Well,
Ron James.
well, before we go to the balloons,
A positive thing, or was
Well,
it a negative thing for the results?
let's get-
of what they're talking about.
let's get their analysis of what's said. Ron, what do you comment on all of this that happened, what we just witnessed or not witnessed?
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't bring us any closer to any kind of disclosure. This idea that we keep forming these government compartments that then come up and go, oh, we don't know anything about this. There's nothing going on. In Accidental Truth, we document that these guys were finding the same kind of results 50 years ago. And so why are they doing this? And at this point in time, it is becoming so blatant that there is this new narrative that is whitewashing the entire past. And this is, it was just really kind of painful to watch. And I encourage people to watch the film because it blows the lid off of everything these guys are doing. This guy sitting in this office, a respected scientist, just basically acting like we're starting from scratch with all of this. And we know that that's not correct. We know that 40 years ago, they had programs, they're documented, we've uncovered them, we've interviewed the guy that ran them, where they were finding the same kind of craft with the same kind of capabilities. And when he says things like, well, we're not seeing anything that shows they're betraying the laws of physics. Well, you know, there's certain laws of physics that will allow an object to fly at a certain speed, come to a dead stop, and take a right-hand turn. You're not violating the laws of physics, but you're certainly violating the rules of anything we know how to do. So, you know, that was a nice sidestep. So I don't know, is this guy truly not read in at any level, or is he toting the line? And if he's not read in at any level, which means you have to take everything he said at face value, we have not made any significant progress towards disclosure if this is what we're getting.
I do want to know, what do you think about the balloons? Did that distract or give an excuse? I mean, what do you feel about that? That was my question. I think in a certain sense it's distracted, because now people say, oh, you know, most of these are just balloons. So
yeah, I think the balloon thing was, you know, nothing to see here, folks, move along. Mufon put out a press release that we didn't think it was anything significant, but you know what it is doing is it's reinforcing subconsciously this idea that there are threats in the sky that we need to be aware of. And you know, that's kind of scary.
Let's get Zenka.
Let me just say this. In 1991, Sidney Sheldon wrote a book called The Doomsday Conspiracy. It was a novel based upon a weather balloon that crashed in Switzerland, and the American Naval Intelligence officer then goes on to meet extraterrestrials. But what is interesting, I was a consultant with astronaut Gordon Cooper on this book, and in the appendix, there's the listing of 23 scientists who died under mysterious conditions who had advanced knowledge of what we will call UAPs.
Well, that's a whole other issue, but
it shows that bottom line is one that is suggesting that there is boundaries, that you step across boundaries, you disappear.
Well, we know that since 50s, McDonald and all these people. Zenka, what was your opinion today?
Well, I think we got to remember this was a meeting to allocate funds. And I think we all want funds allocated to this. And that's the thing. You don't want a budgetary meeting necessarily. I mean, it was, you know, it's like, oh, yes, you know, and of course, we discussed how it's framed in this military threat way, obviously. But that's where, you know, that's where we can get the money, because that's where we spend money, because security is important, whatever, right? So all that stuff was presented in a very logical way, and someone, you know, yes, let's fund this. That sounds good. But what I think is interesting is that the other goal of this meeting is to continue to destigmatize this within the US government and within the public. So when they talked about, oh, can we receive reports, you know, from people who have clearances, like, how are we going to get these reporting? And of course, as we bring this narrative into the reality, there are going to be more and more and more and more and more reports, you know what I mean? So forgetting even about what's happened in the past. And what's interesting is that they're starting to realize that they need climate data from some departments. They also are considering crowdsourcing citizen data. So that's interesting. And the question is how will they ask for that data? I want to share, you know, what we've spent almost a year doing in terms of getting data, you know, looking at what Mufon was gathering, looking at what Ray Hernandez was gathering, looking at what Sean Hargens is gathering with his meta-analysis, and it gets pretty complicated.
Zenka, I just want to say, what we're not getting here is to look outside the box. You know, scientific methods only find what they're looking for. And how do we ever discover anything new? And maybe it's by the data you're getting here, by looking at bigger margins of possibility. So
right, because I mean, here you're saying, oh, on this form, you can say, oh, I had a dream. You may have had an embodied experience. You may have seen it in your consciousness, or maybe you saw it in the physical. And then how did you do it? Was it a Star Watch, or et cetera? But then you start getting into, was it a humanoid being? And you start realizing, oh, there's all these different, you know, felines, short grays, mini humans. Then you start, oh, it's a non-humanoid being. Well, so is it a cryptid? Is it an organic? You have
so far from even considering this, though, Zenka. There's like, you know,
that's what I'm saying. It's interesting because when we collect this data and we organize the data, you know what I mean? How is it going to be done? And that's what I'm advocating is let's ask for funding. Let's say, like, well, the citizen data gets to be organized by the citizens. We'll share data back and forth with you. But if we're filling out your form of contact, what would that look like even? You know what I mean? Like, does it capture the full essence of consciousness and how these things are happening? Because we know this stuff happens in telepathic situations. It happens during regressions, so it's bigger.
Well, I don't think we're going to get that kind of cooperation from them when we're talking about these really advanced concepts that they're not willing to embrace at all. But I'm in contact right now with our lobbying firm in Washington and with Dave, Dave McDonald, the director of Mufon. And what they're saying is that, as disappointed as some people might be, just to summarize, he did not poo-poo the idea that there's an alien possibility here. So at least they left it open, which is a plus. And so I was asked definitely to mention that. And everybody in my camp knows the movie I just made, and they also know the bureaucracy and the body politic in DC and the delicate line that has to be walked. And so
extraterrestrial possibilities. Desiree has some comments though.
Well, I agree with Zenka. It really was a fundraising arrangement discussion today because they're trying to expand their office. It's 9 months old. It looks like they don't have a lot of funding. I think some of the direction they're going, which is enhancement of certain areas and analysis, enlarging the team of science and technology, as well as the international special forces community. I think all that was really a good positive. I do want to say that, I was a little bit, what Alan was saying, that they didn't want to go with any really acknowledgement that, yes, there could be extraterrestrials, to say that in a statement, because actually there was a paper recently that Kirkpatrick did with Avi Loeb. It's called The Physical Constraints on Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. And he wrote this paper. It got, we'll say, not great reviews because people were saying, oh, it's all hypothetical. But he went back to the meteorite that Avi has been looking at for a while called
Oumuamua.
Yes.
Oumuamua. Yep.
That spaceships could be like motherships going by, and then they drop what is called in the paper, I'm not saying this, dandelion seeds to seed different civilizations. So to me, that's a little bit of a positive. So I'm a little bit more positive about him, although, of course, his script today was very much a fundraiser, what we're doing, what we need more of in a certain sense.
Ron. Yeah, but I also want to go back to what you were saying about Mufon, Ron, because their commentary is important for what Zenka's doing, citizen disclosure.
And I wonder if Zenka could connect with Mufon a little closer and try to get some of those reports.
But can go back.
Well, Mufon is definitely, we have offered this department and are in discussions with the opportunity to help them manage some of these reports, because that's what we already do. So it'll be interesting to see, where that goes, because they're definitely going to need that help. And Mufon has been, we've been there for this whole process. Sometimes it's hard to watch the way it plays out, but then you have to understand there's just going to be a certain way that it plays out. And
by Greg Hamabasso, the Extraterrestrial Species Almanacs suggests categories plus should open eyes and ears to sociologists and those in the larger scientific community. We're listening only to those who are strict theoretical physicists looking at their viewpoint, but there is a much larger scientific community now with new means and ways of looking at the psychological profile of what's behind the machines that are being driven from other life forms in the universe.
Yeah, I just want to that thing is drunk and flying saucers. Much. Become they're looking anything You know,
the information over Campeche, Mexico in 2004,
multiple.
where you had 300 vehicles, each the size of some 24 to 28 stories high.
I know, but I want to know, has Mufon been in touch with Gillibrand's office or any of the AARO direct offices directly?
Yes, we interact with Gillibrand. Like I said, we were involved in helping to move forward some of the legislation that she helped to introduce. And so we are in contact with these people. And that's why it's very interesting, because we know what they've been told. We know what they've been told by us, and we know what they've been told by other people. And the fact that there's a very wide chasm between the information that we know they have and the information that they're willing to discuss in this public forum, it just shows that this is a process, and that it's an unpredictable process.
Just seems so far, like we said, Blue Book was way beyond this, at least in acknowledging that there was something undefined. We have regressed, I'd say 50, 60 years to the past. I mean, they started in 1996 with their tracking. I mean, what about everything that was supposed to be in the bill that goes back, that you guys created in 1945? What about?
Well, there's supposed to be this military accountability, everything they have on UAPs going all the way back. But that we're talking about, it's pre-1945, but we're talking about the Foo Fighter phenomenon. We're talking about the technology that supposedly came over from Germany. We're talking about a lot of things that have a very solid body of evidence that, again, this approach that we saw today is whitewashing this entire history. And unfortunately, it is a history. It can't be just swept under the rug. And hopefully, like in Accidental Truth, we prove that to the public in a way that's tangible. I respect this process, and I'm thankful that Mufon has their seat at the table in DC, but what's happening is occasionally hard to watch.
Well, I think Mufon should.
Today was one of those days.
Oh, it's very slow. It's excruciatingly slow, especially when our appetite has been whet. You mentioned Project Blue Book, and there was a lot of discussion this weekend with the Sedona UFO Sightings Conference about Project Bluebeam. And sometimes when we think, and Frank Jacobs talking about timelines and stuff like that, and I don't want to drag this discussion out into this realm because it's a very grounded discussion about the Senate, but when we think about what are the possible futures that we could live into with this phenomenon, one of the futures that we want to avoid is that, right, that the galactic narrative becomes this huge threat. And so, a lot of people are talking about how Project Bluebeam, this idea that they're going to project something in order to control a more negative reality, or we need to keep you safe, so let's sign all these papers right now, you know what I mean, or whatever, whatever happens, right? So the more we talk about this plan, the more that it can't happen, because we know that it's just a plan, or it's just an idea that was hatched at some point, and the collective consciousness will decide which road we take. But so I just wanted to throw that in. The more we talk about Project Bluebeam and how it was constructed and what its vision is, the less weight it will have, and we'd love to have.
People don't know what Bluebeam. People don't know what Bluebeam is, and we don't have to go too far into it, but I mean, it's totally different than Blue Book. What is Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, so it's this idea that if some small group, and some people believe there's only 3,000 people that are interested in kind of controlling, the rest of the world or whatever, and they're saying that there was a series of steps, COVID being one of them, and other things, and Project Bluebeam was the next step. They're saying, oh, they could possibly move it to 2030 or 24, which is the idea that in order to create mass fear on the planet, the ET narrative is a perfect one to do, because it's an unknown, and we tend to fear things we don't know, right? And so the ability to use advanced technology to actually project and control a fake false flag, you know what I mean? Like ET, oh, this is horrible. We've got to get the weapons, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the idea that might have worked one day. Richard Dolan wrote a whole book about false flag operations. One of the things that he covered in that was the fact that Project Bluebeam, as it was floating around in the conspiracy vernacular, was not very practical. And now with deep fakes and the day and age where we're learning that we can't trust anything we see and hear, I think it would be even harder. I wrote a book called Messiah Awakenings that I published in 2012, I think, that's all about how the New World Order was using all this technology to bring about the illusion of an Armageddon event. And you know, it's all quite possible, but the idea of Project Bluebeam, if it was ever such a thing, you know, we might be seeing the evolution of that, in that it's not going to be so much alien ships projected in the sky as it's going to be this seed plant in our collective mentalities of this threat narrative. They may never have to roll it out as anything that they try to pass off as a real event. And then, of course, with as many people that think there's a Project Bluebeam conspiracy, the aliens could come and try to take over the Earth, and nobody's going to believe it's happening.
Well, that's why we all recommend.
And they would have if they
That would be pretty funny.
Right.
You're not really here.
If they wanted to, they could have done it long ago. But okay.
Well, hey, if it's a harvest scenario, let's face it, the planet's bursting at the seams. It's a bumper crop. Time to come in. That is not an official stance of MUFON, by the way. That is a personal joke by me.
Ron, Desiree had something to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's why we recommend your film, Ron, because the more people understand the UFO phenomena from, we'll say, if it has to be the public, from the public perspective, and from scientists like Michio Kaku, it's very, very important that people are made consciously aware of this. So highly recommended. Where do we get to see it? Is it on Amazon right now? How do you get it?
It's on all the digital platforms now. You can get it on Amazon, my Apple iTunes. It's number 5 right now on iTunes, which is pretty cool in documentaries. It's available. So anyway, you can just, if you go to Amazon or iTunes, that's the best places to get it. You can also get it on Vimeo, Redbox, all the different platforms. But just a search for Accidental Truth UFO will bring up places you can see it. Right now, it's available for purchase. On the 25th, it'll be available for rent. I think it's a film you probably want to watch again and again, so I encourage people to buy it. But
congratulate you on your great work, and we hope that the public audience begins to understand the role that every citizen diplomat has a solution to this new phase of cosmic awareness, that we are being gradually prepared to be cosmic citizens.
Otherwise, I think we're going to wait until the aliens themselves start landing again on the White House lawn, because it's really going to be up to them. I think it might take an awful long time if we wait for our government.
Well, I do think it's a citizens movement, which again, Zenka, this is a chance to really promote LightNet, because what you're offering, I'm offering it with remote viewing, making content, but all the courses you're offering online is a chance for people to rely on their own intuition, their own connections, and see there's a bigger picture here. It's not all about military and weapons and shooting things down, but it's about the expansion of consciousness. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing? I think Ron should interview you for Mufon TV, but go ahead, Zenka.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, we believe that anybody can make ET contact, whether you want to see the ship out your back, porch, or whether you want to do it with radios, or whether you want to do it like the military does with remote viewing. It's all accessible. We have all the technology right here. We have eyes, we have bodies. And the more that we experience this, the more that you help the people around you also have a safe and loving experience. And the more the narrative carries from firsthand experience, not watching something. And we also believe that LightNet is in a position with technology to support an interagency on the civilian side data collection point, where it's an open data commons, where people from all over the world can start looking at the data that we've collected, that MUFON's collected, that ET Let's Talk collected, that Mark Sims collected. Like, what is the story there? And it's a beautiful story, and it's one of healing and hope and excitement and renaissance. So yeah, lightnet.org, you can check out our work. We're a nonprofit and we're very supportive of everyone here today that's watching and their curiosity in this, because this is going to be really fun the next 5 years. Oh, wow.
One more thing, Zenka, we're doing remote viewing, making contact. Talk about the other modalities that you're using to make contact.
Yeah, so yeah, I can just share here. So we have all sorts of different modalities, because it can be done. Like the crop circles class, for example, they had so much fun that they kept their 8 weeks going into 4 more weeks because there was so much more to cover. We do astral traveling, which is really great, and in astrology, and looking at what charts were available or what star systems were there when you were born. There's ham radios with me, light language, contact art, intuition, Jedi practice. So these are all, and we've had over 15 different teams at a time running different ways to do this. Telepathy, we're having wake and lucid dreams. So it's just exciting. We track all the data, and we also are building a living library of resources. What are the best videos? What are the best films? What are the best research papers, right? So we can find all this stuff, and it's not scattered around the world. So you can search just for the remote viewing films and research papers, because there's a lot of science behind this, as the Hurtaks have been, decades, like Stanford research, they've been doing the remote viewing research and taking the time to say, hey, this isn't a phenomenon, because we tested it and we tracked it and we marked it and we've studied it. So now it's the time. This is the definition of a renaissance, where everyday people like you and me are coming and they're like, I can remote view in 2 classes. Like, what?
Ron, okay, you were saying, okay, we're going to wrap up soon, Ron. It looked like you have to go, but Zenka, thank you. You bring a whole level of consciousness into the field that, of course, we've just been denied in this congressional hearing.
And it's part of the whole act, actually. Making contact is part of our consciousness linkage to these other intelligences.
And let's bring the State Department involved in this. Let's bring the diplomats involved in this, not just the DOD. Like, if it, it'd be fun to challenge and request that AARO also include the State Department in this, like, if they arrive, wink, wink. Let's be diplomatic.
Full spectrum approach, but we need to understand the critical sociological, the technical, the scientific breakthroughs. And this is why we need to collaborate on levels with those who have the experience and are willing to speak the truth, that we are being prepared for quantum change, to be hopefully quantum, so we say, experiencers.
And cosmic citizens.
Leading to cosmic citizenship. This is a fantastic moment to be alive. We want to thank all of you for inviting us to participate in this serious discussion.
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. Ron, do you have any closing word? Even though it was a bit of a dud, in my opinion, we did not move the ball down the field. I think we lost some yardage here.
I think we lost some yardage, yeah.
Yeah, but the public maybe is a little more curious. Maybe they're more brainwashed, saying, oh yeah, it's military, we can just write it off. They're going to figure this stuff out and we can go back to sleep. Or maybe some people are saying, well, this can't be all of it. If everyone's talking about UAPs, then it's probably, hopefully, they might be thinking it can't just be Chinese or Russian, which is what was really implied throughout this whole hearing. And a huge disappointing resound. And Gillibrand did not come to our defense today.
Although she tried a little.
Although maybe she's just trying to get money for the department, so she could pursue these other possibilities. So,
well, there's a lot going on, and the reason I keep looking away to my phone is because I'm in communication in real time with our lobbying firm in Washington and with the director of Mufon, and we are going to be drafting a public and private response to this by the end of the day. So we'll be doing another press release, and we will be reaching out to some of the people that we saw on television to give them our feedback, and offer them one more opportunity to watch the movie. It's turning into kind of a joke among my little inner circle. It's like, watch the hearings first and then watch the movie if you want the truth.
Well, yeah, no, it's so important. Ron James's film Accidental Truth, for everyone tuning into this, is a very important key to what we were obviously missing today, that there is right? I mean, there's a truth out there we're being denied, and it's come out in the interviews Ron does for this film. It kind of slips out. And I actually want to see the film again, because you just kind of give those little links in there, but it's like, it's only after you see the film do you realize that, yeah, we heard more in your film than we heard in 50 years of government, sort of investigations or not. So,
And how great that the film is just out there. It's a click away. It's like, we don't have to go to the movie theater. Just grab popcorn, watch it tonight. You'll be the talk of the cocktail party with all the information you're gonna have.
Yeah. Well, just in closing, I was very, very honored that JJ and Desiree and you too, Alan, showed up at the premiere. And I was kind of nervous about what they're going to think about, because you guys operate on such a higher, more advanced level of understanding that I thought maybe this was going to be a little too mainstream for you. But I was very, very happy that you guys liked the film.
Go ahead.
We had the opportunity to talk to pilots, sociologists, even astronauts
and heads of state.
Who are waiting for the Americans really to come out of the box, as Gordon Cooper said in his book, Leap of Faith. The U.S. government is in this box, and it has to come out of this box. So we hope that future conversations amongst ourselves will lead to a global dialogue with other experts who will be prepared to offer up their film and documentation of artifacts showing that the cosmic others are already on the planet. It's not a question of hypothetical science. It's a question of futuristic sociology and psychology that can awaken people across the board to say, let's get on with a new approach.
And I think the more and more we fight amongst ourselves, we'll say between Russia and China and ourselves, that the more the extraterrestrials are going to show themselves. And I think ultimately it will be undeniable. But your film is perfect timing for right now, because we all needed that information. Thank you.
And Zenka, thank you for joining us. I also want to thank everyone who's been tuning online. We had about 100 or more people tuning into this broadcast, where more was said here than was said in the halls of Congress. So,
yeah, unfortunately true, but there you go.
What's that, Ron? What did you say?
I said, unfortunately, that's absolutely true, Alan.
All right, so we'll look for Zenka's lightnet.org. I'll be teaching remote viewing.
And we're futurescience.org.
And we're going to be in San Diego this weekend. If anyone wants to come down to San Diego for Portal to Ascension Conference, Linda Moulton Howe will be there along with Adam Apollo.
Ourselves.
But more, who's else is going to be there? Geraldine Orozco's going to be there. Robert Schuck, Grant, Robert Grant. There's going to be a lot of people talking about UFOs. Neil, Gar, and Barbara Lamb will be there, or maybe we're going to give Barbara Lamb a little award there, actually. So I don't know if she's going to make it, but it's a real coming together. Go to ascensionconference.com to look at the thing. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Ron, thanks for your time. Zenka, always great to connect.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone watching. Subscribe, take out a super chat, follow more Disclosure News, and Zenka.